The morning sun cast long shadows across the sprawling metropolis of New Geneva as director Sarah Chun adjusted her communication headset for the third time in 5 minutes. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from barely contained rage that had been building for the past 72 hours. The massive holographic displays surrounding the United Earth Defense Council chamber flickered with incoming data streams from across the solar system, each one painting a grimmer picture than the last. 3 days ago, humanity had made first contact with an alien species. The Zephyrians, as they called themselves, had emerged from the void beyond Pluto in ships that defied every law of physics humanity thought they understood. Their vessels moved without visible propulsion, shifted through space-time like phantoms, and radiated an energy signature that made Earth's most advanced sensors scream warnings that couldn't be properly interpreted. The initial contact had seemed promising, almost miraculous. The Zephyrians had broadcast on every human frequency simultaneously, speaking in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, and dozens of other languages with the fluency of native speakers. Their message had been simple and direct. They came in peace, seeking to establish diplomatic relations with a newest species to achieve interstellar awareness. Director Chun remembered the celebration that had erupted across Earth. Scientists wept with joy. Politicians scrambled to position themselves for historic photo opportunities, and ordinary citizens gathered in the streets to witness what every human being had dreamed of since they first looked up at the stars. The alien ships had been invited into Earth's solar system with open arms, their representatives welcomed to the lunar surface for humanity's first interspecies summit. But the Zephyrians had not come for diplomacy. They had come for entertainment. The holographic display shifted to show the smoking crater that had once been Luna City, humanity's crown jewel of off-world civilization. 10 million souls had called that shining dome home, and in the span of 37 minutes, every single one of them had been systematically executed while the galaxy watched. The Zephyrians had broadcast the massacre across 14 different star systems, treating the slaughter like a gladiatorial spectacle. Their commentary had been casual, almost bored, as they discussed the various creative methods they employed to end human lives. Children torn apart by gravitational fields. Families flash-frozen in a vacuum of space as atmosphere was selectively removed from their sections of the city. Scientists and diplomats slowly dissolved by exotic radiation while their screams echoed through the communication channels. The worst part had been the laughter. The alien audience across the galaxy had found humanity's suffering hilarious. Their broadcasts included reaction feeds from other species, all of them treating the extermination of Luna City like the punchline to some cosmic joke. Humans, it seemed, were considered the universe's latest comedy act, and their death throes were prime entertainment. Sarah Chun had watched every second of the broadcast, forcing herself to witness the atrocity even as her staff begged her to turn away. She had watched because someone needed to remember. Someone needed to carry the weight of what had been done to her species, and someone needed to ensure that the galaxy understood they had made a fatal miscalculation about humanity. The chamber doors hissed open, and Admiral Marcus Rodriguez strode in, his dress uniform crisp despite the fact that he hadn't slept in 3 days. Behind him came Dr. Elizabeth Vasquez, head of the Terra Research Division, and General Liu Wei, commander of Earth's orbital defense platforms. Their faces were grim, but Sarah could see something else burning in their eyes. The same thing that burned in hers. "Status report," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her chest. Admiral Rodriguez activated his personal holo display, showing the current positions of human vessels throughout the solar system. All deep space mining operations have been recalled. The asteroid belt facilities are running at maximum capacity, converting raw materials into ship hulls and weapon systems. We've pulled every human being back inside the orbit of Mars. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her tablet displaying classified research data that made Sarah's blood run cold, even though she had helped authorize the projects. The experimental drives are ready for mass production. We can have the first batch of enhanced vessels operational within 6 days. The new weapon systems have exceeded all projected performance parameters. General Liu's expression was stone. Ground-based planetary defense networks are at full readiness. If they come for Earth, they'll find us ready. But, Director, I have to ask, are we really going to do this? Are we really going to declare war on what appears to be a galactic civilization that treats genocide like afternoon entertainment? Sarah Chun looked around the chamber at the faces of humanity's military and scientific leadership. These were the people who would have to carry out the orders she was about to give. These were the people who would have to live with the consequences of humanity's response to the Luna City massacre. General Liu, 3 days ago, I would have said that humanity's greatest achievement was reaching for the stars in peace. I would have said that our species' destiny was to explore the galaxy with open minds and open hearts, to learn from other civilizations, and contribute to some grand cosmic community. She paused, touching the memorial pin on her collar that bore the names of every soul lost at Luna City. The list was so long that the text was barely visible to the naked eye. But the galaxy has shown us exactly what it thinks of peace. It has shown us exactly what it thinks of humanity. We are entertainment to them. Our children are props in their cosmic joke. Our hopes and dreams are punchlines to be broadcast for their amusement. The massive displays around the chamber shifted to show images from the past 72 hours. Human industrial capacity had been unleashed like nothing seen since the darkest days of the old world wars. Factories that had produced civilian goods were retooling for military production. Research installations that had focused on peaceful exploration were redirecting their efforts toward weapons research. The entire species was mobilizing with a unity that transcended every political, cultural, and national boundary that had ever divided them. They wanted to see what humanity looks like when we die, Sarah continued, her voice growing harder with each word. Now, they're going to see what humanity looks like when we're angry. And I promise you all, they're going to learn the difference between comedy and tragedy. Dr. Vasquez cleared her throat nervously. Director, the ethical implications of what we're discussing, the scale of retaliation we're considering, it could make us everything we've sworn we'd never become. Sarah turned to face the scientist, and for a moment her mask of professional control slipped. The raw fury in her eyes was enough to make everyone in the room take a step back. Dr. Vasquez, they broadcast the murder of 10 million human beings for entertainment. They laughed while our children died screaming. They turned our first contact with another species into a snuff film for alien perverts who think genocide is hilarious. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper, but every word carried the weight of absolute conviction. If ensuring that never happens again makes us monsters, then we'll be the monsters that keep our species alive. Admiral Rodriguez activated another set of displays, showing the rapid construction taking place in shipyards across the solar system. The new vessels will be ready in 6 days. But, Director, I need to know, what exactly are our objectives here? Are we planning a rescue mission? A punitive expedition? A demonstration of force? Sarah Chan walked to the central command platform and placed her hand on the authentication scanner. The chamber's primary display lit up with humanity's most classified military assets, research projects that had been theoretical just a week ago and were now entering final production phases. Admiral, our objective is very simple. The galaxy thinks humanity is weak. They think we're amusing. They think we're victims. She looked around the room at each of her senior staff. We're going to correct that misconception. We're going to show them exactly what an angry human looks like when you kill their families. The holographic displays shifted to show star charts, displaying the locations of the species that had broadcast their enjoyment of the Luna City massacre. 14 different civilizations spread across 100 light years, each one about to receive a very personal lesson in human nature. We're going to visit every single species that laughed while our people died. We're going to introduce ourselves properly. And we're going to make sure that humanity becomes a story they tell their children to keep them from sleeping peacefully. General Liu nodded slowly, understanding the magnitude of what was being proposed. A campaign of total retaliation. Not retaliation, General. Education. The galaxy clearly doesn't understand what humanity is capable of when properly motivated. We're going to provide a comprehensive learning experience. Dr. Vasquez pulled up her research data again, highlighting the technological leaps humanity had made in just 3 days of focused effort. The new drive systems will allow us to reach their nearest colonies within weeks instead of years. The weapons we've developed. Director, Some of these systems violate every treaty humanity has ever signed regarding warfare. Sarah's smile was cold enough to freeze helium. Dr. Vasquez, those treaties were with other humans. They were written by people who believed in honor, dignity, and the sanctity of life. The aliens have shown us that such concepts are weaknesses in their eyes. She gestured toward the holographic display showing the destruction of Luna City. So we'll speak their language instead. We'll communicate in terms they understand. The chamber fell silent, except for the humming of the advanced computers processing the massive amount of data required to coordinate humanity's transformation from peaceful explorers to something altogether more dangerous. Each person in the room understood that they were witnessing a turning point not just for their species, but for the galaxy itself. Admiral Rodriguez broke the silence. Director, once we begin this campaign, there's no going back. We're talking about actions that will define humanity's place in the galaxy for centuries to come. Sarachin looked at the memorial display, showing the faces of the Luna City victims. Children who would never grow up. Scientists who would never make another discovery. Families who had been torn apart for alien entertainment. She thought about the laughter that had accompanied their deaths, the casual cruelty that had been broadcast across the stars. Admiral, 3 days ago our place in the galaxy was as victims and entertainment, as prey for species that find our suffering amusing. If our choice is between being feared and being laughed at while our children are murdered, she turned to face the assembled leadership of humanity's military forces. I choose fear. Let them learn to be afraid of the dark, because humanity is coming. The massive displays around the chamber began showing the real-time construction progress across the solar system. In asteroid mining facilities, automated systems worked around the clock to forge hull plating from exotic alloys that had been theoretical just days before. In orbital shipyards, vessels took shape that bore no resemblance to humanity's previous peaceful exploration ships. These were predators designed for one purpose: teaching the galaxy that humanity was not entertainment. Dr. Vasquez uploaded her final research reports to the central database. Director, the enhanced drive systems are ready for integration. The new weapon platforms have exceeded all performance projections, and the special projects are ready for deployment. Sarah nodded, authorizing the release of resources that would transform humanity's industrial capacity into something the galaxy had never seen before. Signal all facilities. Begin final preparations. In 6 days, humanity introduces itself to the galaxy properly. As the senior staff began coordinating the massive undertaking, Sarah Chun remained at the central command platform, watching the displays show humanity's transformation in real time. The aliens had wanted to see what humans looked like when they died. Now, they were going to see what humans looked like when they decided that death was preferable to allowing such atrocities to continue. The galaxy had made a simple mistake. They had confused humanity's preference for peace with an inability to wage war. They had mistaken kindness for weakness, diplomacy for helplessness. In 6 days, that educational gap would begin to be corrected in the most direct way possible. Luna City had been humanity's gift to the stars, a shining example of what their species could accomplish when they reached beyond their home world. The aliens had turned it into a graveyard for their entertainment. Now humanity would return the favor, and the galaxy would learn that some species were far more dangerous when you made them angry than when you left them alone. The countdown had begun. In 6 days, the universe would meet the real humanity, and the laughter would stop. The Zephyrian Entertainment Complex orbiting Kepler 442b hummed with activity as millions of viewers tuned in for the latest episode of Primitive Reactions, the most popular show in galactic broadcasting. The complex itself was a marvel of engineering, a crystalline structure that caught and reflected the light of 3 different stars, creating rainbow patterns that shifted and danced across its surfaces. Inside, beings from across the galaxy gathered in luxurious viewing pods, their various atmospheric and gravitational requirements perfectly accommodated by technology that humanity couldn't even begin to understand. Ambassador Zethkar of the Zephyrian Broadcasting Collective adjusted his bioluminescent display patches, ensuring that his excitement levels were properly visible to his audience. The Luna City broadcast had broken every viewing record in galactic history, and The demand for follow-up content was unprecedented. 14 different species had submitted bids for exclusive broadcasting rights to whatever humanity did next, and the profit potential was astronomical. Welcome, beings of culture and refinement, to another edition of Primitive Reactions, Zethkar announced, his voice carrying across subspace frequencies that reached every corner of the galaxy. 3 rotations have passed since our spectacular Luna City broadcast, and our monitoring stations have detected fascinating developments in the Sol system. The massive viewing screens around the entertainment complex flickered to life, showing real-time feeds from concealed observation posts throughout human space. The images were startling even to species that had witnessed countless primitive civilizations rise and fall. In the span of just 3 days, humanity had transformed their entire industrial infrastructure into something that looked more like a military machine than a peaceful exploration culture. Krell-Toth, a representative of the hegemony species that had provided some of the most enthusiastic commentary during the Luna City massacre, leaned forward in his viewing pod with obvious anticipation. This is remarkable development speed for such a primitive species. Most civilizations require several standard cycles to achieve this level of military mobilization after a traumatic event. The screens showed human shipyards working at impossible pace. Vessels that had been civilian transports were being stripped down and rebuilt as military platforms. Asteroid mining facilities had been converted into weapons manufacturing centers. Most intriguingly, the humans were constructing ships using design principles that the galactic monitoring systems couldn't quite analyze. Our xenobiology experts believe we're witnessing what they call a survival response cascade, Zethkar explained to his audience. When certain primitive species face extinction-level threats, they can temporarily exceed their normal technological limitations through sheer desperation. It's quite amusing to watch, really. Dr. Velnara, the collective's chief xenobiologist, appeared on a secondary screen from a research facility. The human response is textbook primitive survival behavior. They're burning through resources at an unsustainable rate, likely shortening their civilization's lifespan by decades just to create the illusion of military strength. From a scientific perspective, it's fascinating to observe a species commit evolutionary suicide in real time. The audience across the galaxy responded with the equivalent of laughter in their various forms of communication. To species that had mastered interstellar travel millennia ago, humanity's desperate scrambling appeared pitiful and ultimately futile. The entertainment value was in watching them try so hard before inevitably failing. But some of the monitoring data was causing confusion among the Zephyrian technical staff. The energy signatures coming from new human vessels didn't match any known propulsion technology. The weapons systems they were installing appeared to violate several fundamental laws of physics. Most puzzling of all, the humans seemed to be constructing their new military infrastructure using principles that suggested they understood technologies far beyond their supposed development level. Chief Technical Analyst Moore Dunn pulled up additional sensor data on his private screen, frowning as he tried to make sense of the readings. The human vessels were generating power signatures that should have been impossible with their primitive fusion technology. Their weapon systems were drawing on energy sources that his instruments couldn't properly identify. Most concerning of all, some of the larger ships appeared to be equipped with drive systems that could theoretically achieve speeds that would make them a threat to established galactic civilizations. But such concerns were quickly dismissed by the entertainment staff. Primitive species often created energy readings that confused galactic monitoring equipment. The technology gap between humanity and the established galactic civilizations was so vast that any apparent threat was surely just misunderstood sensor data. Our intelligence estimates suggest that humanity will likely attempt some form of retaliation against our forward observation posts, Zethkar announced, causing excited reactions throughout the viewing audience. Our defense specialists assure us that human technology poses no meaningful threat to Zephyrian installations, but the entertainment value of watching them try should be substantial. The screens shifted to show the Zephyrian observation posts scattered throughout the outer regions of the Sol system. These installations were protected by energy shields that had withstood attacks from species far more advanced than humanity. Their automated defense systems could obliterate anything approaching with hostile intent. From the Zephyrian perspective, humanity's apparent military buildup was simply setting the stage for an even more entertaining display of primitive futility. But the monitoring stations were reporting some unusual activity that didn't quite fit the expected pattern. Human vessels were moving through the outer system in formations that suggested a level of tactical sophistication that primitives weren't supposed to possess. Their energy signatures were becoming increasingly difficult to track, as if they were developing some form of stealth technology. Most puzzling of all, they seemed to be avoiding areas where Zephyrian observation posts were located, suggesting they somehow knew where the concealed installations were positioned. Kreltoth gestured enthusiastically toward the displays. I propose we enhance the entertainment value by revealing our observation posts to the humans. Let them know they're being watched. The desperation and fear in their communications should provide excellent comedic content. The suggestion was met with approval throughout the viewing audience. The idea of taunting the primitives, of letting them know that their every move was being observed and broadcast for galactic entertainment, would add delicious psychological torture to the physical demonstrations they were planning. Zethkar activated the communication systems. Attention, human primitives. Your amusing military preparations have been observed and broadcast to civilized species throughout the galaxy. Your desperate scrambling provides excellent entertainment value. Please continue your futile efforts while we prepare the next phase of your education. The message was broadcast on every frequency the humans use for communication, ensuring that their entire species would receive the psychological impact. The expectation was that humanity would respond with the typical primitive emotions: despair, rage, pleas for mercy, or perhaps more amusing attempts at negotiation. Instead, the human response was a single transmission on a frequency that the Zephyrian monitoring equipment had never detected before. The message was brief and delivered in a calm, professional tone that seemed completely inappropriate for a species facing extinction. Message received and understood. Thank you for confirming target locations. Deployment commences in 72 hours. Terra Defense Council out. The galactic audience found this response hilarious. The primitives were apparently so traumatized that they couldn't even formulate coherent threats. The calm professionalism of their response was clearly a psychological defense mechanism, a desperate attempt to maintain dignity in the face of inevitable annihilation. But Chief Technical Analyst Moore Dunn was studying the technical aspects of a human transmission with growing concern. The frequency they had used required technology that humans weren't supposed to possess. The signal had been transmitted using methods that implied understanding of subspace communications that took most species centuries to develop. Most troubling of all, the humans had somehow detected the exact locations of the Zephyrian observation posts, which were supposed to be completely concealed from primitive sensor technology. "Sir," Moore Dunn said quietly to Ambassador Zethkar during a commercial break, "I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from the human vessels. Their technology appears to be advancing at a rate that doesn't match our models of primitive development." Zethkar dismissed the concern with a wave of his bioluminescent appendage. "Technical analyst, you're allowing primitive deception to confuse our instruments. Desperate species often attempt to simulate advanced technology to intimidate their enemies. The humans are clearly trying to bluff us into believing they pose a legitimate threat." The entertainment program resumed with commentary from military experts who analyzed humanity's apparent strategy. The consensus was that humans would likely attempt surprise attacks on the observation posts using whatever crude weapons they had managed to construct. The attacks would fail spectacularly, providing excellent footage of primitive military incompetence that could be broadcast for the amusement of civilized species. Admiral Kesron of the Hegemony Fleet appeared on screen to provide professional military analysis. From a tactical perspective, the human approach is completely predictable. They're concentrating their forces for maximum psychological impact, rather than distributing them for strategic effectiveness. Any species with actual military experience would recognize this as the desperate gambit of primitives who don't understand modern warfare. The audience responded with a galactic equivalent of applause. The anticipation was building for humanity's inevitable failure, which would provide even more entertaining content than the Lunicity Massacre. But 3 days later, when the first human vessels emerged from hyperspace near the outermost Zephyrian observation post, the entertainment value took a dramatic and unexpected turn. The human ships moved with precision that suggested technological capabilities far beyond primitive levels. They appeared without any warning from the advanced detection systems that were supposed to provide early alerts about approaching vessels. Most shocking of all, they opened fire with weapons that effortlessly penetrated energy shields that had been considered impregnable. The observation post exploded in a brilliant flash of light that was visible from 3-star systems away. The automated distress signal lasted exactly 2.3 seconds before being cut off permanently. Chief Technical Analyst Moore Dunn stared at his instruments in disbelief. The energy readings from the human weapons were unlike anything in galactic databases. The speed and precision of their attack suggested tactical capabilities that rivaled the most advanced military civilizations. The complete destruction of a hardened observation post in under 30 seconds indicated firepower levels that primitive species simply weren't supposed to possess. "This is impossible," Admiral Kesron muttered, studying the tactical data. "Primitive species don't develop this level of military capability. The technology gap should have made this outcome impossible." But before anyone could properly analyze what had just happened, alerts began flooding in from Zephyrian observation posts throughout the region. 12 different installations reported human vessels approaching at speeds that exceeded the theoretical maximum of primitive technology. The attacks were coordinated with precision that suggested a level of military sophistication that contradicted everything the galactic community believed about humanity. Within 6 hours, every single Zephyrian observation post in human space had been reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The attacks had been executed with surgical precision, overwhelming firepower, and tactical coordination that left no doubt about humanity's true capabilities. The entertainment complex fell silent as the implications began to sink in. The primitives weren't primitive. The desperate species scrambling for survival was actually something far more dangerous. And the laughter that had accompanied the Luna City massacre was about to turn into something very different. Ambassador Zeth Carr stared at the displays showing the destruction of installations that had been considered invulnerable to primitive attack. For the first time in his career, he found himself wondering if the collective had made a serious miscalculation about the entertainment value of provoking humanity. The galaxy was about to receive an education in the difference between amusement and terror, and humanity had just begun teaching the first lesson. The emergency session of the Galactic Entertainment Council convened in the neutral space station orbiting the dead star Zirion 7, far from any inhabited system. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Council had called an urgent meeting to address what their xenobiologists were now calling the human problem. The massive chamber, designed to accommodate representatives from 47 different species, buzzed with nervous energy as beings who had never experienced genuine fear tried to process the destruction of 12 Zephyrian observation posts. High Counselor Vexindra of the Altarian Consortium called the session to order, her crystalline voice resonating through translation matrices that converted her words into dozens of different communication methods. "Fellow beings of the Council, we are gathered to address the unprecedented situation developing in Sector 7 Alpha. The species designated as human has demonstrated capabilities that contradict all established models of primitive development." The massive holographic display at the center of the chamber showed footage from the destroyed observation posts. The images were disturbing not just because of the destruction, but because of how effortlessly it had been accomplished. Each installation had been eliminated with surgical precision using weapons that galactic scientists couldn't properly classify. The human vessels had moved through space using propulsion systems that appeared to violate fundamental laws of physics, and their tactical coordination suggested military experience that primitives weren't supposed to possess. Dr. Melkorian, the Council's chief xenobiologist, activated her data feeds with obvious reluctance. "Honored counselors, I must report that our initial classification of humanity appears to have been incomplete. The technological capabilities they demonstrated during their recent military actions suggest a development level that contradicts our observation data." Ambassador Kreltoth of the Hegemony shifted uncomfortably in his environmental pod. As one of the most vocal supporters of the Luna City broadcast, he was now facing uncomfortable questions about his species' role in provoking what appeared to be a significant military threat. Dr. Melkorian, are you suggesting that our intelligence gathering was inadequate? The humans were clearly primitive when we first encountered them. Their spacefaring capability was limited to their own solar system. Their technology was based on crude fusion and chemical propulsion. How could they have developed advanced military systems in a matter of days? The xenobiologist's expression conveyed the galactic equivalent of deep concern. Ambassador, that is precisely what makes this situation unprecedented. According to our models, the technological leap humanity has demonstrated should require decades or even centuries of development. Either they were concealing advanced capabilities from our observation, or they have achieved a breakthrough in applied technology that our science cannot explain. High Counselor Zephyran of the Crystalline Assembly leaned forward, his geometric form shifting to display agitation patterns. Dr. Melkorian, were the implications if humanity was indeed concealing their true capabilities? What does this suggest about their intentions regarding galactic civilization? The question hung in the chamber's atmosphere like a toxic cloud. If humanity had been deliberately presenting themselves as primitive while secretly developing advanced military technology, it suggested a level of strategic deception that made them far more dangerous than anyone had realized. It implied that the species that had just demonstrated the ability to obliterate advanced installations might have been planning their response to galactic contact from the very beginning. Admiral Kesron accessed the tactical databases, projecting military analysis data that made several council members recoil in their environmental pods. Honorable counselors, based on the human attack patterns and weapon signatures, our military experts estimate their current fleet capabilities could pose a threat to established galactic civilizations. Their technology appears to incorporate principles that we don't fully understand. The chamber erupted in the galactic equivalent of alarmed discussion. Species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia suddenly found themselves contemplating the possibility that a supposedly primitive race might actually be capable of challenging their supremacy. Counselor Morthak of the Infinite Reaches raised his sensory array to demand attention. This council authorized the Lunicity broadcast based on the assumption that humanity posed no meaningful threat to galactic civilization. If our assumptions were incorrect, then our actions may have provoked a species with unknown military capabilities. What are the potential consequences? Dr. Melkorian activated additional data displays showing the current state of the human solar system. The images were sobering. In the weeks since the observation post attacks, humanity had continued their military buildup at an exponential rate. New vessels were emerging from their construction facilities every few hours, each one incorporating design elements that pushed the boundaries of known engineering principles. More troubling still, human ships were beginning to venture beyond their solar system, conducting what appeared to be reconnaissance missions toward the home systems of species that had participated in the Lunicity broadcast. Counselors, our long-range monitoring indicates that humanity is conducting detailed surveillance of 14 different star systems. These correspond exactly to the species that provided commentary during the Lunicity entertainment broadcast. The xenobiologist paused, allowing the implications to sink in. They appear to be gathering intelligence for potential military action against every civilization that participated in or enjoyed their suffering. The council chamber fell silent, except for the humming of life support systems maintaining dozens of different atmospheric environments. The beings who had laughed while 10 million humans were slaughtered for entertainment were beginning to realize that their victims might not have been as helpless as they appeared. High Counselor Vexendra called for order as panic communications began flooding in from council members' home systems. Dr. Melkorian, what is your assessment of human intentions? Are they preparing for defensive actions, or are we facing the possibility of an offensive military campaign? The xenobiologist's reluctance to answer was palpable. High Counselor, based on their current military preparations and surveillance activities, humanity appears to be planning what our tactical experts classify as a punitive expedition. They are gathering the resources and intelligence necessary to launch coordinated attacks against multiple targets simultaneously. Ambassador Zethkar of the Zephyrian Collective finally spoke up, his bioluminescent displays flickering with patterns that indicated extreme agitation. Honor counselors, perhaps we should consider diplomatic outreach to the humans. If they are indeed planning military action, we might be able to negotiate a peaceful resolution. The Luna City incident was, after all, intended as entertainment rather than genuine hostility. The suggestion was met with the galactic equivalent of nervous laughter. Several council members pointed out that attempting to explain genocide as entertainment might not be the most effective diplomatic approach when dealing with a species that had just demonstrated the ability to destroy supposedly invulnerable installations. High Counselor Zephyrin accessed his species' historical databases, searching for precedents that might guide their response. Fellow counselors, I have reviewed our records of primitive species that demonstrated unexpected military capabilities. In every recorded case, such species either destroyed themselves through internal conflict or were eliminated by established civilizations before they could pose a meaningful threat. However, humanity appears to have avoided both outcomes. Admiral Kesron projected additional tactical data showing the human fleet movements over the past week. The patterns were disturbing for military professionals who understood the implications of such coordinated activity. Counselors, the human fleet movements suggest operational planning at a level that rivals the most sophisticated military organizations in galactic history. They are positioning assets for simultaneous strikes against multiple targets while maintaining defensive coverage of their home system. This level of strategic coordination typically requires centuries of military development. Dr. Melkorian activated her most sensitive monitoring equipment, trying to gather additional intelligence about human capabilities. The results were even more disturbing than the previous data. Honorable counselors, I am detecting energy signatures from the human fleet that suggest they have developed weapons capable of sterilizing entire planets. Their largest vessels are generating power levels that could theoretically support planet-killing armaments. She paused, reviewing the data again to ensure accuracy. If these readings are correct, humanity now possesses the capability to eliminate entire civilizations. The implications crashed over the council chamber like a tsunami of cold realization. The species they had tormented for entertainment had not only survived their aggression, but had apparently used it as motivation to develop the capability to threaten every civilization in the galaxy. Counselor Morthak's sensory array shifted to display emergency alert patterns. Dr. Melkorian, are you reporting that a supposedly primitive species has developed civilization-ending weaponry in a matter of days? How is such rapid technological advancement possible? Counselor, our scientific understanding suggests it shouldn't be possible. But the energy signatures don't lie. Either humanity has been concealing far more advanced technology than we realized, or they have achieved breakthroughs in applied physics that challenge our fundamental understanding of technological development. High Counselor Vexender called for a recess as emergency communications flooded in from member civilizations. Reports were arriving from across the galaxy describing human reconnaissance vessels conducting detailed scans of military installations, industrial facilities, and population centers. The clear implication was that humanity was gathering targeting data for potential strikes against every species that had participated in their humiliation. When the session resumed an hour later, the mood in the chamber had shifted from concern to barely contained panic. Intelligence reports indicated that human vessels were positioned within striking distance of 12 different star systems, all belonging to civilizations that had provided commentary during the Luna City massacre. Ambassador Kreltoth spoke with obvious difficulty, his communication systems struggling with concepts a species had never needed to express before. Honored counselors, I have received communications from my government requesting guidance on how to respond to humanity's apparent preparations for military action against our colonies. My people are asking whether they should prepare defensive measures or attempt diplomatic contact. The question highlighted the fundamental problem facing the Galactic Entertainment Council. They were civilizations that had grown complacent through millennia of unchallenged supremacy. Their military forces were designed for policing primitive species and maintaining order among established civilizations. None of them had prepared for the possibility of facing an enemy with advanced technology and the motivation to use it. Dr. Melkorian activated her final set of data displays, showing the most recent intelligence gathered from human space. The information was devastating for any hope of peaceful resolution. Counselors, Our monitoring stations have detected broadcasts within human communication networks. They are referring to their current military preparations as Operation Starfire. Based on intercepted communications, the operation's objective is to, quote, provide educational demonstrations to species that find genocide entertaining, unquote. The chamber fell silent as the full implications became clear. Humanity wasn't preparing for defense or negotiation. They were preparing to teach the galaxy a lesson about the consequences of treating human lives as entertainment. And based on their demonstrated capabilities, that lesson was going to be written in the ashes of civilizations that had been too confident in their own superiority. High Counselor Vexandra called for an emergency vote on whether to warn member civilizations to begin evacuation procedures for their most vulnerable populations. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, advanced civilizations were preparing to flee from a species they had dismissed as primitive entertainment. The laughter that had accompanied the Luna City massacre was about to be answered with something far more permanent, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that they had awakened something terrible in the darkness between stars. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, humanity's first true warship, as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. The massive vessel stretched over 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull composed of exotic materials that had been theoretical just 2 weeks ago and were now forming the backbone of humanity's expanding fleet. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces reflecting the same cold determination that had driven the entire species since Luna City. "Admiral," called out Commander Sarah Kim from the sensor station, "we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. The Zephyr Entertainment Complex is broadcasting on multiple frequencies. They appear to be treating our arrival as another form of entertainment." Rodriguez nodded grimly. Intelligence reports had indicated that the aliens were so confident in their technological superiority that they were actually advertising humanity's approach to their viewing audience. Galactic civilizations were tuning in to watch what they expected to be humanity's final, futile gesture before inevitable annihilation. "Communications, put me on all frequencies. I want every being in this system to hear what I have to say." Lieutenant Torres nodded and opened channels across the electromagnetic spectrum and subspace frequencies. The message that Admiral Rodriguez was about to deliver would be heard by millions of aliens who had gathered to watch humanity's expected destruction. "This is Admiral Marcus Rodriguez of the United Earth Defense Force, commanding the human fleet now entering your system. To the Zephyrian Collective and all species currently viewing this broadcast, 3 weeks ago, you murdered 10 million human civilians for your entertainment. You laughed while our children died. You found our suffering amusing." His voice remained calm and professional, but every word carried the weight of absolute conviction. "Today, you learned the difference between comedy and tragedy." The bridge displays showed the Zephyrian response as their military forces began moving to intercept the human fleet. Dozens of alien warships emerged from concealment around the gas giant that hosted their entertainment complex, their energy signatures indicating weapons and defensive systems far beyond what humanity had possessed just days earlier. "Sir," reported Commander Kim, "enemy vessels are powering weapons. Energy signatures suggest directed plasma systems capable of vaporizing our hull composition. They're moving to surround us." Rodriguez studied the tactical display with the calm detachment of a professional who had spent the past 2 weeks planning this exact scenario. "Mr. Torres, signal the fleet. All vessels are authorized to engage. Show them what human engineering looks like when we stop pretending to be peaceful." The space around Kepler 442b erupted in violence as humanity demonstrated the technological breakthroughs they had achieved through focused effort and unlimited motivation. The human vessels moved with impossible agility, their enhanced drive systems allowing them to dance between alien weapons' fire while returning devastation with surgical precision. The UES Retribution opened fire with its primary weapon system, a gravitational lance that focused space-time distortion into a coherent beam of destructive force. The alien flagship, protected by energy shields that had withstood attacks from advanced galactic civilizations, simply ceased to exist as the beam passed through it. Where there had been a kilometer-long warship, there was now only empty space and expanding debris. Target eliminated, Sir, reported Weapons Officer Chong with professional satisfaction. Gravitational lance performed within expected parameters. No damage to our systems. Around them, the human fleet was systematically dismantling Zephyrian forces with weapons that violated every assumption about primitive technology. Quantum disruptors tore apart the molecular bonds holding alien ships together. Temporal mines created localized fields where time moved differently, causing enemy vessels to age centuries in seconds. Most devastating of all, the reality anchors projected fields that prevented alien ships from using their advanced physics-bending technologies. On the entertainment complex, panic was beginning to replace amusement as the viewing audience watched their supposed superiors being effortlessly destroyed by primitives. The broadcasts that had started as comedy were becoming horror shows as the true scope of human capabilities became apparent. Ambassador Zethkar of the Zephyrian Collective appeared on the main communication screen, his bioluminescent displays flickering with patterns that indicated extreme fear. Admiral Rodriguez, we demand that you cease this unprovoked aggression immediately. The Galactic Entertainment Council will respond to these attacks with the full force of civilized space. Rodriguez's expression remained unchanged as he watched another group of alien vessels disappear under concentrated human fire. Ambassador Zethkar, your entertainment complex broadcast the murder of 10 million human civilians to 14 different species for their amusement. This is not unprovoked aggression. This is education. The human fleet began its final approach to the entertainment complex itself, a massive crystalline structure that housed millions of viewers from across the galaxy. The aliens inside were transmitting desperate pleas for mercy, offering reparations, promising that such entertainment would never be produced again. Sir, Commander Kim reported, we're receiving surrender offers from the complex. They're offering to broadcast public apologies, pay reparations, and cease all hostile activities toward humanity. Rodriguez considered the offers for exactly 3 seconds before shaking his head. Commander, they had the opportunity to consider consequences before they decided to murder our families for entertainment. Inform the complex that their surrender is noted and rejected. The UES Retribution moved into position above the entertainment complex, while the rest of the human fleet eliminated the remaining Zephyrian military forces. The massive structure below them housed more alien civilians than had lived in Luna City, but those civilians had watched 10 million humans die while laughing and cheering for more creative violence. Admiral Lieutenant Torres called out, we're receiving communications from across the galaxy. Multiple species are demanding that we spare the entertainment complex. They're claiming that destroying it would make us as bad as the aliens who attacked Luna City. Rodriguez activated the ship's external communication systems, ensuring that his response would be heard across galactic space. To all civilizations currently monitoring this engagement, you had the opportunity to voice moral objections when human children were being murdered for your entertainment. Your silence, then, makes your protests now irrelevant. The gravitational lance powered up again, its energy signature causing space itself to ripple around the UES Retribution. Below them, the entertainment complex began broadcasting final pleas for mercy, promising reforms, offering anything that might spare the millions of beings inside. Target locked, sir, reported Weapons Officer Chong. Gravitational lance ready to fire on your command. Rodriguez looked at the tactical display showing the complex that had profited from human suffering, where millions of beings had gathered to enjoy watching his species die in agony. He thought about the children who had been torn apart by gravitational fields while aliens laughed at their screams. He thought about the families who had been flash-frozen in space while entertainment commentators discussed the artistic merits of their expressions of terror. Fire. The gravitational lance struck the entertainment complex with the force of a collapsing star, and the massive structure simply ceased to exist. The crystalline walls, the viewing pods, the broadcasting equipment, and the millions of beings inside were all reduced to their component atoms in a fraction of a second. Where there had been a monument to galactic entertainment, there was now only empty space. The silence that followed was deafening. Across the galaxy, billions of beings who had been watching the broadcast suddenly understood that humanity was not interested in negotiations, reparations, or reforms. They were interested in teaching lessons that would never be forgotten. Communications from Admiral Chun aboard the UES Vengeance. Lieutenant Torres reported. The hegemony system operation is complete. All military installations eliminated. Population centers have been given 12 hours to evacuate before sterilization begins. Rodriguez nodded and activated fleet communications. All ships, Operation Starfire, is proceeding according to schedule. Move to Phase 2 targets. Remind the galaxy that human children are not entertainment. The human fleet split into smaller task forces, each one heading toward a different star system. Across the galaxy, species that had provided commentary during the Lunicity massacre were about to receive personal visits from representatives of humanity's new military doctrine. The broadcast had stopped transmitting entertainment. Instead, they were now carrying desperate warnings as civilizations that had considered themselves untouchable scrambled to evacuate their most vulnerable populations. The primitives had become predators, and the galaxy was learning that some lessons could only be taught through direct experience. As the U.S. Retribution moved toward its next target, Admiral Rodriguez received reports from human task forces across the galaxy. The Crystalline Assembly's military headquarters had been reduced to quantum foam. The Infinite Reach's primary shipyards were now expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The Altarian Consortium's capital system was being evacuated as human vessels took up positions around every inhabited planet. "Sir," Commander Kim reported, "we're receiving communication from the Galactic Entertainment Council. They're requesting an immediate ceasefire and offering to begin peace negotiations." Rodriguez considered this for exactly as long as it had taken the aliens to consider the moral implications of broadcasting genocide for entertainment. Inform the Council that humanity is open to negotiations. They can surrender unconditionally and submit to war crimes tribunals, or they can continue to experience educational demonstrations of human military capability. Those are their options. The message was transmitted across galactic space as the human fleet continued its systematic campaign against civilizations that had found human suffering entertaining. The galaxy was learning that some species were far more dangerous when you made them angry than when you left them alone. The laughter that had accompanied the Lunicity massacre had been replaced by desperate pleas for mercy, but humanity had learned from their teachers. Just as the aliens had shown no mercy to human children, humanity now showed no mercy to civilizations that treated genocide as entertainment. The education was just beginning, and the galaxy was a very slow student. 6 months after Operation Starfire began, Director Sarah Chun stood in the rebuilt Lunicity Memorial Garden, looking out at Earth's newest monument to human determination. The garden itself was a masterpiece of engineering and remembrance, built on the exact spot where 10 million humans had died for alien entertainment. Each flower, each tree, each pathway was precisely placed to honor specific individuals who had been murdered while the galaxy laughed. But the memorial was not the only thing that had been rebuilt. Around it, the new Lunicity rose like a testament to humanity's refusal to be victims. This was not the peaceful research colony that had been destroyed, but a military fortress that could withstand attacks from any known weapon system in the galaxy. Its defensive arrays could obliterate fleets, its manufacturing facilities could construct warships that made the U.S. Retribution look primitive, and its population had volunteered to live on the front lines of humanity's new position in galactic civilization. The reports on Sarah's desk told the story of the past 6 months in stark, professional language that couldn't quite capture the magnitude of what humanity had accomplished. 14 major galactic civilizations had been reduced to scattered refugee populations fleeing toward the rim of the galaxy. 3 entire star systems have been sterilized as examples of what happened to species that found genocide entertaining. The Galactic Entertainment Council had dissolved after the last of its member species surrendered unconditionally to human military forces. Admiral Rodriguez appeared on the holographic display, broadcasting from the bridge of humanity's newest flagship, the UES Inevitability. Behind him, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency of professionals who had spent the past 6 months teaching the galaxy about consequences. Director Chun, I'm pleased to report that the final phase of Operation Starfire has concluded successfully. The Zephyrian Home system surrendered this morning after their defensive fleet was eliminated. We now have complete control of all 14 target civilizations. Sarah nodded, reviewing the surrender documents that had been transmitted from across the galaxy. Each one was identical in its complete capitulation to human authority. The species that had laughed while human children died were now begging for the privilege of serving the species they had tried to destroy. What's the status of the war crimes tribunals, Admiral? Proceedings are underway on 17 different worlds. We've identified over 3 million individuals who participated in or profited from the Lunacity broadcast. Justice is being administered according to human legal standards, with one modification. Rodriguez paused, ensuring that the full implications would be understood. Every sentence is being broadcast to the surviving galactic population, so they can learn what accountability looks like. Dr. Elizabeth Vasquez entered the Memorial Garden, carrying the latest reports from humanity's expanded research and development programs. The technological breakthroughs that had begun with the Lunacity Massacre had continued exponentially, driven by unlimited resources and the knowledge that human survival depended on maintaining technological superiority over any potential enemies. Director, I have the preliminary results from the Galactic Survey Project. Our exploration fleets have confirmed the existence of over 400 intelligent species throughout the galaxy. Most of them are attempting to establish diplomatic relations with humanity before we decide their threats. Sarah accepted the data tablet, scanning through intelligence reports that would have been impossible to gather just 6 months ago. Humanity now controlled the most advanced military fleet in galactic history, commanded resources from dozens of star systems, and possessed technology that made them the undisputed masters of known space. Dr. Vasquez, what's your assessment of potential threats among the unexplored species? Director, based on our analysis of galactic communication networks, word of humanity's capabilities has spread throughout known space. Most species appear to be more interested in avoiding our attention than challenging our authority. The few that might pose potential threats are already beginning to evacuate regions that might bring them into conflict with human expansion. The irony was not lost on Sarah Chun. Humanity had entered galactic civilization as peaceful explorers seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars. They had been transformed into the galaxy's most feared predators by species who thought genocide was entertaining. The victims had become the victors through sheer determination and a refusal to accept their assigned role as entertainment. Admiral Rodriguez's image shifted to show the current disposition of human fleets throughout the galaxy. Red markers indicated former enemy systems now under human control. Green markers showed species that had formally requested human protection from other potential threats. Yellow markers identified civilizations that were attempting to negotiate alliance treaties with humanity. Director, we've received over 600 formal requests for alliance or protection agreements from species throughout the galaxy. Most of them are offering complete access to their technology and resources in exchange for guarantees that humanity won't consider them threats. Sarah studied the star map, noting how quickly the galaxy had reorganized itself around humanity's demonstrated capabilities. Species that had dominated their regions for millennia were now scrambling to align themselves with the new galactic power structure. The primitives had become the masters, and everyone wanted to be on the winning side. Admiral, what's the status of the Memorial Fleet? All 10 ships are operational and taking positions throughout the galaxy. Each vessel carries the complete historical record of the Lunacity Massacre, along with documentation of our response. They'll serve as mobile reminders of what happens to civilizations that mistake human kindness for weakness. The Memorial Fleet represented humanity's commitment to ensuring that the lessons of Lunacity would never be forgotten. Each ship was both a monument to the dead and a warning to the living. They carried the names of every victim, recordings of their final moments, and evidence of the alien laughter that had accompanied their murders. More importantly, they carried weapons capable of sterilizing entire star systems, ensuring that the message would be delivered with appropriate emphasis. Dr. Vasquez activated additional displays showing humanity's expanding presence throughout the galaxy. New colonies were being established on worlds that had been abandoned by fleeing civilizations. Research stations were being constructed to reverse engineer alien technologies. Industrial facilities were being built to support humanity's growing fleet and population. Director, the expansion program is ahead of schedule. We've established permanent human presence in 47 star systems. Population growth projections suggest we'll have sustainable colonies throughout the galaxy within a generation. Sarah walked through the memorial garden, reading the names of the children who had died for alien entertainment. Their sacrifice had not been in vain. Humanity had transformed from victims to victors, from primitives to galactic masters, from entertainment to educators. The species that had tried to destroy them had instead forged them into something harder and more dangerous than they had ever been before. Dr. Vasquez, what's the status of the rehabilitation programs for surviving alien populations? The programs are proceeding according to human ethical standards. Former enemy populations are being educated about the value of human life, the consequences of treating genocide as entertainment, and the benefits of serving as productive members of human-led civilization. Compliance rates are approaching 98%. The rehabilitation programs represented humanity's approach to dealing with defeated enemies. Rather than simply eliminating them, humans had chosen to educate them about why their previous behavior had been unacceptable. The aliens were learning to value human life, to understand human culture, and to contribute positively to the new galactic order under human leadership. Admiral Rodriguez's communication shifted to show reports from the outer rim of the galaxy, where human exploration fleets were making contact with previously unknown civilizations. The reports were remarkably consistent. New species were eager to establish peaceful relations with humanity and avoid any behavior that might be considered threatening. Director, the exploration fleets are reporting a fascinating phenomenon. Species we've never encountered before are already familiar with human capabilities. Word of Operation Starfire has spread faster than our ships can travel. Most civilizations are preparing welcome ceremonies rather than defensive measures. Sarah smiled grimly at the irony. Humanity's reputation as galactic peacekeepers and educators was spreading throughout the galaxy faster than their actual presence. Species that had never heard of humans before the Luna City massacre were now preparing to welcome them as the new guardians of galactic civilization. The transformation was complete. Humanity had entered the galaxy as hopeful explorers and victims of alien cruelty. They were now the undisputed masters of known space, respected and feared by hundreds of civilizations that had learned the hard way about the consequences of underestimating human determination. Admiral, Dr. Vasquez, I want you both to remember something as we move forward with galactic administration. We didn't choose this role. We didn't want to become the galaxy's police force. We didn't seek to dominate other civilizations. Sarah paused, looking at the memorial wall bearing the names of 10 million murdered humans. But they forced this transformation on us by treating our children's deaths as entertainment. Now we have a responsibility to ensure that such atrocities never happen again. The holographic displays showed the current state of the galaxy. Hundreds of civilizations living peacefully under human protection, former enemies rebuilding their societies according to human ethical standards, and new species eagerly requesting inclusion in humanity's expanding sphere of influence. The galaxy laughed while our people died, Sarah continued. Now they live under the protection of the species they tried to destroy. They've learned that human kindness is not weakness, human mercy is not helplessness, and human patience is not infinite. Most importantly, they've learned that some lessons can only be taught through direct experience. Admiral Rodriguez nodded from his position aboard humanity's flagship. Director, what are our long-term objectives for galactic administration? Simple, Admiral. We're going to build a galaxy where no species ever again believes that genocide is entertainment. We're going to ensure that children from any world can grow up without fear of being murdered for someone else's amusement. And we're going to make certain that the name human becomes synonymous with justice rather than victimhood. The memorial garden fell silent, except for the gentle sound of wind through the trees, planted in memory of Luna City's children. Each tree represented a life cut short by alien cruelty, but also a civilization that had learned the hard way about the consequences of that cruelty. The galaxy had a new teacher, and the lessons were being written in the ashes of empires that had thought genocide was funny. Humanity had been forged in the fire of alien aggression into something harder, stronger, and more dangerous than they had ever been before. The victims had become the victors, the prey had become the predators, and The galaxy had learned that some species were far more dangerous when you made them angry than when you left them alone. The laughter had stopped. The education was complete. And humanity stood as the guardian of a galaxy that would never again mistake their kindness for weakness.